Hello, all of you wonderful bright lights of love. Welcome to your weekly reading, energy report, discussion, energetic exchange and flow. You'll forgive me for being a little less energetic, perhaps, than usual. I am still struggling to get my mind to function properly because I got very little sleep last night, or actually, for that matter, throughout this entire last week, because many different things shifted in my universe, or my neck of the universe, um, that meant that my activity level was heightened beyond fathomability. And yesterday I had to fly up to um, San Rafael for a political fundraising dinner with a U.S. senator. I know I sound very highfalutin. Of course, it's not of my own accord that this happened, but I did feel that sort of universal magic in the air where it's like, how did I get here? What part of this did I manifest? Consciously or subconsciously? So the reason I'm telling you all of that is because I imagine in some shape or form you can probably relate to the journey. Now, there was an arc to this journey. Last Sunday, I had specifically taken time out for myself to go on a long hike. And on that hike, I was listening to an audiobook of something called Top Magic, which it's not that I wouldn't recommend it to you. It's just it's pretty basic in a lot of ways, and it's also very much taking the idea of witchcraft, magic, inner ceremony to a more youthful, perhaps more of a Gen Z perspective on things. And some of it's a little gross because it's like pretty materialistic in many ways. But it all comes down to the same principle, of course, which is that we have the power to manifest whatever we choose. um, Obviously, with cause and effect based upon the provenance of our, origin story and how, the last steps in our life are built upon to make room for the next one. So obviously that's going to be different for all of us. That said, for me, I went on this long hike and I was listening to this, and then I actually made the decision after that to put into play, for the first time in many years, an actual um, intention and release burning ceremony, using a variety of different elements. Um, or at least a representation of all four of the tangible elements. So, or should I say measurable elements? And I put a message out. It was more of an, I suppose my intentionality was more abstract, which is probably why the acceleration of manifestation in my life this last week ended up being quite chaotic. And, excuse me, by the way. But that said, one can only deduct from all that I'm telling you that if you set your intentions right and you do actually put in the time and energy, you can manifest an enormous amount of change. I want to say improvement. I'm not sure that's the right word. Perhaps achievement is more the word. And I certainly have been put through the mill this week. I don't think I've worked as hard as I have this last week in a very long time. And I'm proud of my accomplishments, but I'm also exhausted, as I did not get to sleep until about 3 o'clock in the morning and was awake at around 8. And I actually had to write myself a schedule for the day because I have so much to do on this one day off, which isn't entirely a day off either because I have things that I have to do for work too. So, anyway, all that is not an exercise in complaint at all because I actually feel a potentiality in my terrestrial existence that I haven't probably felt in quite some time. I just have to figure out how to manage my time. And of course, this is also Virgoan. You know, we are in Virgo season now, and we're in the beginning stages of, that first decade of the Virgo season. And what is that as a logical progression from the Leo season? Well, we've done all of that work on our identity, our ego, um, and the melding of that into our environment. And now in Virgo season, it's actually the process of manifestation, solid, tangible manifestation of the result of whatever happened to us in Leo season. So, of course, as always, those first 10 degrees essentially correspond to in great part challenges that force us to let go of what doesn't serve us in our Virgoan energy. And what is Virgo? Well, obviously we all have our ideas of what Virgo is. The meticulous, detail-oriented perfectionist is sort of the most mainstream, I suppose, stereotypical idea of Virgo. But Virgos are analytical. Virgos are innovative in their own way, not perhaps in the same way as a Gemini, um, because there has to be more structure for Virgo energy. But it is essentially the search for structural empowerment. In other words, ways to elevate everything that we've done, all the work that we've done on ourselves, elevating that onto a platform that can be managed efficiently and purposefully um, in full integration of the systematic neurological and spiritual pathways. We fine tune. That's what we've been doing. As an endless process of fine tuning. And so, anyway, I hope that gives you some insight into all of that. What are the big influences on the horizon? Well, I mean, we have planets now slowly moving into Libra, so, that's always the shift. Certain planets are always ahead of the game, and they start bringing in that energy in advance. And so, I mean, Libra season is something to look forward to because there is more of an emphasis on finding balance. But of course, what that also implies is that in Virgo season, we can often feel a little bit out of balance because we're working on all those processes, right? So you have to excuse Enzo in the background. He's mad as a hatter right now, and seems to think that I am a 24-hour playpen. That's not true. He's very sweet when he sleeps, and also when he's snuggly, but right now he's crazy. And my place is a complete disaster. And of course, he's probably extra rambunctious because I haven't been spending that much time with him. But when I am here, I make sure that I spend quality time with him, just to reassure you that I'm not abusing my beautiful companion. So this week we have Mercury moving into Libra. We already have What do we already have in Libra? Venus. And you've probably been feeling that. The Libran Venus energy is one where we feel a desire for harmony in our relationships, in our environment, how we interact from a soul and heart perspective in our environment. So, if there is any chaos in your world, it probably isn't coming from matters related to Venusian energy. It's most definitely probably in other areas. And the great thing about Mercury moving into Libra is that that's also a lot of balance in our communication, which I think is long overdue. Of course, I say all of that at the end of this month. Mercury goes retrograde, and we're just about to move into its Mercury retrograde shadow, entering that. Not a big deal. Again, I think that Mercury retrograde is severely overblown. I think it's really stupid for people to anticipate that just because of Mercury retrograde, all of their electronics are going to break down and they're going to miscommunicate everything, because that's simply not the truth. If you're evolving, what it does is it brings you the opportunity to see where your communication or your interaction with the world around you can be improved upon, or if there are things in your life that are starting to age out of relevance, they will also be brought to your attention. Now, if you're a conscious person, that process probably becomes much less painful. I think that the reason why it resonates so much in the collective is that most people are not very self aware, and so they're not really aware of how much of what happens to them is self created, right? I mean, obviously, if you haven't had your car serviced for 3 months beyond the service date and then something happens with it and you're like, shit, it's because Mercury is retrograde, that's just bypassing your own accountability, right? It's like, no, you forgot to do it, or you neglected to do what you needed to do to maintain it. Anyway, most of the time when you hear people complaining about Mercury retrograde, you could probably pinpoint an origin story along those lines. So, but it does mean that, Mercury being in Libra and then there being a retrograde towards the end of September, that will be a revisitation of the aspects of this balance in communication that we're looking to establish. Um, and we'll talk more about Libran energy, obviously, the closer we get to that season. Let's stick to Virgo right now. I feel, even though I'm partially brain dead, that even the way that I'm talking to you right now is very Virgo. And of course, I have my glasses on, which I find funny too. But actually, I have them on because if I didn't have them on, I'm afraid you'd turn off the screen because I'd look like a ghoul. So sorry for the glare. Okay. In fact, I don't know what's going on in general. It's very bright behind me. And when you're really tired, you really don't want that brightness. So after this, I will force myself to go out into the world so that I actually get some form of vitamin D activation from the sun. Where do we start? Because I'm not. Oh, I do have to talk about one other thing. Okay. Um, Mars opposing at Neptune this week. I think it's Tuesday when that happens here in the northern hemisphere, and I don't know why I say the northern hemisphere. I think we all get so confused about geography, right? It's quite complicated. You know what I mean? It's not about the northern hemisphere because there's people in the southern hemisphere that are on the same time zone as people in the northern hemisphere. Just, all you people that are on the other side of the international date line. That's what I'm trying to say. It may be Wednesday for you. Anyway, forgive my slight pre-high school thought process right now. Yes, Mars opposing Neptune. So what does that mean? Okay, so Mars, which is that fervor and drive to push forward, to um, embody power, essentially. And power is only a dirty word when it's applied in a dirty way. So when I say power, I'm meaning empowerment, and I'm meaning um, just the driving life force. And yes, Mars is more of a yang energy; it's more masculine, and so therefore, um, it's that warrior energy. It's that idea of uh, there being a fight for something, you know. And to be perfectly honest with you, I need to do a tiny little bit of homework right now while I'm talking to you because I need to see, excuse me, something. I mean, what a mess I am, honestly. But I will have it. Okay. Yes. So, okay. So Mars is at 19 degrees Virgo. So we haven't really talked about Mars in Virgo energy, but think about that because Virgo is a very containing energy. And Mars is a very, expansive, doesn't want restriction and discipline and um, yeah, containment. So it's almost like Virgo season in a way from a Martian perspective is, to to keep us in check, to keep us at a pace that is manageable, you know. And I think it stands to reason when we're talking about all of this with Mars being in Virgo that there is that feeling that maybe everything else is that Mars energy is pushing everything else forward, and we're being forced to kind of negotiate that space, so that we don't have a nervous breakdown or we don't lose our minds or we don't, feel deeply out of alignment and potentially spiritually or physically ill, as a result of these things. So, you know, this is when things can happen in our lives that force us into more structure, into more awareness, so that we harness that Martian energy in a way that's constructive and not just chaotic and steamrolling, which Mars in Leo can have more of a tendency to be because it's like the I, and it's you're struggling with the ego in the Mars energy. If you see what I'm trying to say. So opposing Neptune, well, Neptune we know is our idea of illusions and attachment to ideas that don't necessarily aren't structured around truth. Very often it's our origin stories, it's our ancestral trauma, it's also um, the way that our traumas have shaped our ideas around certain things. For example, for me, I think that, I have a lot of toxicity surrounding ideas of success, ideas of um, fulfillment, ideas of permission to access either of those things. And where's the disparity between the two in my life? It's like it's quite enormous a lot of the time. Success and fulfillment. You know, first of all, how do you define either one of them? That's going to obviously be pivotal in how that's going to manifest in your life. And if you're out of alignment with either of those concepts, perhaps one is far too materialistic and the other is far too um, emotional. And so the two realms have always been viewed as being parallel but never crossing paths. Whereas, this energy of the opposition between Mars and Neptune sort of forces us to figure out what that actually means in convergence, which is a fascinating concept, one that I can't apply to myself right now because I feel um, like I have a bunch of air in my head. So I'm just allowing these words to flow. I hope they make sense. But I'm not in any state of mind to give an anecdote of that in my own life right now because that I can just sense. I feel it in here in my heart and just a little bit in my solar plexus too, where it's like that's an indication right away that there's a lot to be released and to be resolved in that part of my life. So I'm anticipating that, and obviously with all of the professional activity that's going on in my life and the chaos and potential conflicts and conflicts of interest, should I say, all that stuff is kind of like, I mean, when you feel that, when people talk about it as being a pit in the belly or whatever, and it's like, that's not really what that is. It's like fire energy, like, and it's stored in parts that, when we haven't resolved it, that sense of anxiety or uh, um, a sense of the pressure of time and a lack of control around our choices and direction, that's really just an indication that we intrinsically, intuitively know that it's an uphill climb and that that's going to require of us to apply ourselves. And, let's be honest, like a lot of the time, it's not I don't want to say that we're spiritually lazy because that seems accusatory, but the reality is, if we hold ourselves into account, it's like there's a truth to that, that sometimes we want to bypass or we want to circumvent or pretend that some part of the process doesn't need to be done. But because intuitively we know that it has to be, there's that feeling of like, oh God, like, can I just close my eyes and go to sleep, or can I just escape in some way, or can I find some other distraction that will, that I can convince myself is far more important, right? Um, so, anyway, blah, blah, blah. How many minutes have I been? Okay, I've been talking 21 minutes about astrology and my lack of sleep. So, I will get into our reading. I hope that's explained a lot of things for you. Again, I can't tell you how that's going to manifest exactly in your life, but um, I give you these guidelines of the map of astrological energy based upon what seems most relevant and important. Of course, there's all kinds of other aspects taking place, but Mars opposing Neptune will probably have the most um, transformative energetic effect and display of consequence in your life. And that's a good thing. In many ways, you know, um, we could see that much more in the outer world as well. I mean, it's the thing is that we have to look on it at a macro and microcosmic level. But and I've been talking to you about it purely on the microcosmic level because I don't want to make worldly predictions. But I do think that what this Mars opposing Neptune can really do in our world is really bring to the forefront the massive shifts that have been taking place peripherally, whatever it is, the tangible push towards um, either a fight against illusion, lies, mistruths, um, things that don't inspire trust. Um, we may find, for example, that the media is exposed in some shape or form more for their corruption, or perhaps, if not exposed for their corruption, that is just in the collective that more and more people become more and more aware and therefore combative towards the atrocity of misinformation, however you want to interpret that. Um, anyway, like I said, I like to focus on the spiritual and the self and that evolutionary process because change starts from within and we lead by example and we are beacons of light on this spiritual journey in self awareness. So, therefore, you know, whatever happens in the outer world, we will manage. Trust that. Where would you like me to start, Spirit? Okay, I'm going to start. We got we got two Spirit Animal Oracle cards, so I probably should get into those right away. The first that came out was Elephant Spirit, Learn from the Past. Again, I think that when we have these big leveling up periods of time with how we treat ourselves and how we interact in the outside world, and how we facilitate the evolutionary process in a constructive way for ourselves, consciously and subconsciously. It's inevitable that, we're faced with repeat cycles that are not exact replicas of what we've already experienced, but more opportunities to revisit how we perhaps didn't uh, give ourselves the full opportunity to level up in the past. You know, so again, you probably notice when I'm tired, I do have this horrible tendency to use a lot of ums and you knows, and those are remnants of my adolescence. Because, like many people of my generation, I thought being a valley girl bimbo was cool. Not that I grew up in that environment whatsoever, but it was aspirational through the television. Neptune. Oh, maybe I'll have a breakthrough and stop using ums and you knows and whatever other uh, oratorial shortcomings that do not benefit my communication skills. What am I talking about right now? 25. Okay, where is that? No elephant spirit. Okay, I'll hold it up because the less time you see me and my tired face, the better. Although we often wish we could leave the past behind, elephant spirit reminds us that memory matters. We must respect the wisdom of the elders who hand down to us traditions that have shaped to express our connection to each other and respect for the community. What has come before informs what we are experiencing today, and we must never forget our legacy of strength and dignity. Elephant spirit appears with the message that we are to acknowledge that which came from before and learn from it. All of us are memory based creatures, and we must revisit the past to understand where we are and where we are going. The stories of events you experienced, the stories in our collective memory, and the stories of relationships you have had can be told many ways. Was what story will you tell? Elephant Spirit is here to encourage you to make it one that stirs in a sense of power and dignity, for you have honored yourself by choosing to learn from your past. Spirit rejoices at your willingness to learn and grow. And it's interesting because that's something that I've had conversations about with two of the closest people to me in my life, and that is that these people themselves had conversations with people in their lives or experiences with people in their lives that, those peripheral people. In fact, I can say I had the same experience with people in my life too this week, where um, the enormous weight of being in the position where you have other people's expectations of your time, but they're not really willing to level up. And therefore, we find ourselves, again, very Virgoan energy, confronted with the fact that it's not that we don't want to give time to those people that are caught in their victimhood and in their victim narratives, and, where they're still consumed by the trauma rather than being able to be outside of the trauma and understand it and figure out how to level up beyond it. These people define themselves by those traumas, and I think that we've all been there because that's part of this journey, isn't it? Is letting go of all of that and working through that through those dark nights of the soul. So these people are so attached to their victim narrative, and they sense in the more, let's say, light-bearing individual, the more self-examined individual, a hook opportunity, and then what happens is that the gravitational pull of the baggage of the victim mentality in others that no longer fits us becomes a real strain, and it can really start to feel as though we're restricted within certain dynamics, and there's almost a repulsion, because that's the law of the universe, attraction, repulsion, magnetic um, law, and the more we move to the light, the more we have to give ourselves permission to kindly detach from those that do not wish to do the work. We cannot do the work for them. We can guide and we can lead by example, but we can't do the work for other people, and we can't afford to give that amount of space and energy to somebody else's vacuum. Anyway, that's just a little note for you. And here's the protection message. I have to read it, even though it makes it all very long, because I do think that there's a struggle with that right now for all of us. So let's go. Protection message. Are you feeling uncomfortable with a tradition, custom, or familiar behavior that no longer fits who you are? Do you wish the past could be erased so it could no longer cause you a moment's pain? Elephant Spirit is here to encourage you to write a different story and alter the traditions in ways that acknowledge that we all evolve, for transformation is our nature. Elephant Spirit calls you to not be selective in your memory, because ignoring the good or the bad will prevent you from growing your wisdom and strength. Build on the best of the past, learn from the worst, and walk into the future with dignity, accompanied by Elephant Spirit, who remembers the truth and honors your strength and wisdom. Beautiful. Now, that segues, I think, directly into our next card, which is number 66, White Raven Spirit, Trust in the Magic. And again, it's important to remember, and I did get this from this pop magic book that I was talking about. There is a specificity to magic if you wish to practice it in that capacity, but there's also such a thing as an abstract magical spell or intention or whatever you want to call it. And generally, I tend to work more in the abstract realm because I do actually believe that we have to honor the universe and the energetic flow, which is that the opportunities and evolutionary processes that are required in order for us to continue growing and leveling up are always on offer to us in divine perfection, if we're ready to be open to them and seize them and allow the flow, allow things to happen, not be in resistance to them, and trust that process. And so, while I might you could essentially put your energy into like, oh my God, that guy is so hot, or that girl is so cute, and I want to be intimately close to that person. I mean, you could do magic for that manifestation. But the reality is that's just you setting an intention to actually take action. Because regardless, like if you feel empowered by the magic within of your soul and your heart, and the universe's flow, will step forward and you'll understand that if you get rejected, that's because that's not the intended outcome for you. The universe is looking out for you so that you don't end up in some kind of intimate entanglement with somebody who's a hot mess and like just drags you into their victimhood. And let's be honest, very often subconsciously our sexual desire for a person is, we're seeing something in another person that we don't necessarily see in ourselves. And that sometimes might be because you've already graduated beyond that point. To go into some relationship, yeah, some guy might have the hottest body because he spends like 4 hours a day in the gym and eats nothing but sweet potatoes and spinach juice. But, well, actually, and probably a lot of meat. Gross. But the fact of the matter is that when your focus is on that, where is your soul at? Is that really who you want to be connected to? Is that really who you're going to learn from? Again, these are I'm being very simplistic right now, but these are the things we have to remember when we set our intentionality. Can you be accountable enough to actually see that something that you desire is just a manifestation of some bullshit that you've already let go of? Nothing in the universe is random, for the intricate web of co-creation weaves together all events and has done so since the beginning of time. Coincidences have meaning, and White Raven Spirit appears to remind you to pay attention to these synchronicities so that you might recognize patterns. Even the winds dance in a pattern, participating in the magic of Spirit's plan for all. And haven't you ever felt that, when you're in a quiet place? I mean, actually, it could be even here in West Hollywood where I live. Sometimes if I'm walking at night and, the temperature's dropped a bit and the wind starts blowing and you hear the wind rustling in the trees and it just feels alive and as if you're being communicated with. Um, so, again, these are the patterns that, they inform us. And you can speak back to that too. I do. I mean, people probably think I'm nuts. I try to do it in my head, but sometimes I don't. And then I think, oops. Align with the highest good and intentions, and you will come to see that White Raven is guiding you, an ally to you, and a messenger from Spirit. Speaking of, I wanted to also quickly say, last night when I was driving home after a very long evening and flying back down from Napa, and then getting to my boss's house, and then driving home, the moon was very clear in the sky. It was beautiful. It was a half moon, and it seemed at its exact half point, and which it probably wasn't, but it certainly looked that way. And it was sitting in a way I feel like I'd never really noticed the moon in that um, configuration. Um, Again, the moon creates so many visual illusions that it's open to personal interpretation, how you sense that energy and what its meaning is. But I just had this very strong feeling that it was really a message, and a message not just for me, for all of us, that I'm sharing this with, that we are at a halfway point right now in a leveling up process. So I don't know what that means exactly for you, but take stock of it. Think about that, how it applies to your life. I just decided I needed to tell you that. The universe is conspiring on your behalf right now, drawing you to the light and bringing you the magic and miracles that are your birthright. Now is the time to trust in the magic of the world that is everywhere and in all things. Pay attention to how things come together as if by magic, and you will see the hand of Great Spirit arranging things in your favor. Okay. I'm not reading the message from our Sacred Destiny Oracle cards, but I will just show them to you because, I mean, clearly they're very straightforward. Illumination and enlightenment. Why do these cards feel... Oh, God. Who knows what that is? Gross. What am I doing? Okay. Just meditate on those images for a minute or two, or probably not a minute or two, but as long as I'm holding them up here, because that's your state of mind right now that you're moving into, and I think that's really amazing. It's like that is sort of the embodiment of my experience of the moon last night that I was talking about. And it is that wonderment and that awareness and that being present in the silence of the night and experiencing things outside of what is artificial and created by man, and being more at peace with what's directly from nature. Uh, but enlightenment and illumination, that is that. Oh, I guess. Well, okay, I understand it now when I was just talking about the moon. This is the midpoint, basically, illumination leads to enlightenment, obviously, right? So we're at the very midpoint between the two. Thanks, Spirit, for clarifying that for me, rather than making me babble and make a fool of myself. Our Sufi Wisdom Oracle card of the week. Slow down to relax. I feel like I could hypnotize you with that image, so I won't hold it up too long. Break to enjoy the beauty around you. Again, strong message there about nature. Patience is not just sitting and waiting, it is visioning. It is looking at the thorn and seeing the rose, looking at the night and seeing the day. Lovers are patient and know that even the moon needs time to become full. Beautiful. That's from Rumi. There are times when we feel weary, drained, and fatigued. Everything seems to be moving at its normal pace, yet our usual energy, drive, and motivation take a bit of a dive. This is where our body and soul are telling us to slow down, take care, and not burn ourselves out. The time has arrived to sit back, relax, and focus on foreseeing the future. I mean, you might not be able to sit back and relax, but you can sit back and relax a little more and focus a little bit more on foreseeing the future. Rumi carries a powerful message. Turn your focus inward and toward your spiritual development. You are being called to slow down to see more of the beauty around you. Rumi wants you to realize, if you haven't already, that the power is within you, and you can create anything you wish. All the answers you have been looking for are revealing themselves to you now. But first, you must make the time to connect with the inner source of your divine power. By quietening your mind, not only will you be able to see things more clearly and less reactively, but the spaces in your mind may bring forth some amazing insights. Whether it is a past life pattern or something you have learned, it is time to set yourself free so you may live more creatively and step into your true power. And our mantra for the week ahead is the following. I am determined to fill more of my time with peace and to relax for as long as I need to renew. So, at the risk of alarming some of you, we may need to be very mindful of that just to prevent burnout this week, which I could certainly see in my life. Now, bizarrely, the cards came out in a very strange way, the tarot, that is, and a hodgepodge of traditional tarot and Osho Zen tarot. So what I'm going to do is, I got 3 cards that came out together as an arc that I'm not going to read from because we kind of already know these cards. And, you know, we have the Ten of Wands. I am actually going to quickly read the Ten of Wands suppression because I don't think that we've had this very often. So it's what we're letting go of, which leads into the notion of where we have compromised and where that does not suit us or serve us. And then we see the conditioning card, which is what we're letting go of. Again, so this is all about the negative in this Virgo energy that we are transcending. So I'm going to see what I can get from the Ten of Wands, just to give us a little bit of direction as to what we're leaving behind. So let's see that. I'll hold it up. It's not the cutest of images, but there you go. The figure on this card is quite literally all tied up in knots. His light still shines within, but he has repressed his own vitality, trying to meet so many demands and expectations. He has given up all his own power and vision in return for being accepted by the very same forces that have imprisoned him. The danger of suppressing one's natural energy in this way is apparent in the cracks of a volcanic eruption about to take place around the edges of the image. The real message of the card is to find a healing outlet for this potential explosion. it is essential to find a way to release whatever tension and stress might be building up inside you right now. Beat on a pillow, jump up and down, go out into the wilderness and scream at the empty sky. Anything to shake up your energy and allow it to circulate freely. Don't wait for a catastrophe to happen. And that is not a prophetic idea of catastrophe being on the horizon. It's just a reminder that as we go into Virgo season, and Virgo is an intense season of activity, and there's so much happens, so much. It's very, very dense as an energetic season. It's just a reminder that, self care is essential, and listening to that um, inner voice that tells us where we need a healing outlet. And of course, that explains why we have the compromise card, because the requirement there is, not, if we're not, if we, I've sensed that in myself. Okay, so I'm finally starting to have faith again in my work environment and my professional, and my personal environments. Um, sorry, it's poor use of language, but you understand what I'm meaning. Um, that I have to let my own light shine. That no matter what, if I've gotten this far, if anybody wants anything from me, it's because of the authentic me, not some illusion of something, or me, whatever I'm trying to do in order to please other people, because I still do that, as you probably do in some way too, especially in such situations as work or family, perhaps for you, if that's a strong structure in your life. Um, we have to be our authentic selves. And if we aren't, then we fall deeply out of alignment and fall into this trap of the potential of a catastrophe, because there's inevitable burnout in that. So that requires compromise. But the idea of compromise, very often we think of compromise as sacrifice. Compromise is the opposite in this context. It's actually taking a certain amount back for yourself in order to stay energetically aligned. And the way that we do this is by escaping this conditioning. If you remember, this card is all about the story of like the lion who was raised by sheep and doesn't realize his inner lion until, or inner lioness, until seeing their reflection in the water. And so it's an inner leadership issue. This is about taking ownership of our empowerment and our authentic drive, and allowing that to be the primary drive forward in our choices and the way that we convey ourselves. I mean, obviously, there are limits to everything. If you work within a hierarchy, you can't just overstep all of the boundaries of hierarchy. But if you are yourself, you already know how to do those things, how to achieve what you need to achieve for your own satisfaction and evolutionary process, without needing the direction of other people. So remember that. That's just an overarching concept behind the week. Now, interestingly, we'll go through this pretty quickly. What our three cards are, they tell a very solid story, but they do also, sorry, it's apocalypse now. What the helicopter is going on? We have the Ace of Pentacles, which is the energy that we have created and that is the foundation of this current energetic flow. And the Ace of Pentacles is, that manifestation of a material world dream. It is this achievement of self-worth manifesting in the outer world. So however that is directive in your life, there's some kind of opportunity, divine opportunity, that has come along, is manifesting itself in some shape or form, and it's whatever the outcome of it is, this is a confirmation that that path is right for you in your evolutionary spiritual process. Now, where does it lead us to is this current energy of the self, of the Six of Pentacles, which is a beautiful jump to go from the Ace of Pentacles to the Six of Pentacles, because the Six of Pentacles is when we have enough for ourselves to be able to give to others. And that doesn't, obviously, pentacles do tend to be of the material realm, but it's not just that. It's power of manifestation. It's support. It's anything tangible, measurable. So when we accept our success, when we accept our value, and again, this came to me earlier today, it's always important to remember that, it's normal to seek being valued for what we do. That is not the same thing as seeking validation, right? And this is about valuing ourselves enough that we can value others. And the outcome card that we have is the Page of Wands, which is maybe counterintuitive to look at like that, because here we are in this empowerment in the material realm, and then the Page of Wands is the the childlike inspiration. It's the creative seed. So that becomes awakened in us as a result of this shift into valuing ourselves in everything that we do. We get to return to the garden of joyful abundance in childlike wonderment, if that sounds relatable to you. I'm sure it does in some shape or form, no matter your age. That it always exists within us, but we kill it off the more we submit to expectation, and that comes from the need to be validated, right? When we need to be validated, we shift from our authentic inner self, our inner child, into a version of something that is not authentic and doesn't resonate in a way that is useful to our spiritual growth. It's suppressive. The bookends from the Osho Zen that sort of explain how this process has taken place. What we're coming out of, what we're transcending, is this card, morality, which I have no idea what morality. I mean, I don't mean in life, I have no idea what morality is. Actually, in all honesty, I don't really know what morality is. It's a very difficult thing to, it's a concept, right, that doesn't necessarily, well, there's not really any universality to morality, believe it or not. I'll leave you with that thought to ponder. It is the Queen of Swords. So interesting, because the Queen of Swords is a card of empowerment. So let's see how morality, I mean, I guess we could be looking at the lower frequency version of the Queen of Swords, of what we're leaving behind, which is a sort of a defensiveness in our knowingness. It's the need to prove what we know. It's the need to slash away at other people's ideas in order to feel sort of a sense of self-importance. So maybe we're moving out of that as we move into this abundance. Morality has restricted all the juice and energy of life to the narrow confines of her mind. I guess I should show you that. It can't flow there, so she really has become a dried up old prune. Her whole manner is very proper and stiff and severe, and she is always ready to see every situation as black and white, like the jewel that she wears around her neck. The Queen of Clouds lurks in the mind of all of us who have been brought up with rigid ideas of good and bad, sinful and virtuous, acceptable and unacceptable, moral and immoral. It's important to remember that all these judgments of the mind are just products of our conditioning. And whether our judgments are applied to ourselves or to others, they keep us from experiencing the beauty and godliness that lies within. Only when we break through the cage of our conditioning and reach the truth of our own hearts can we begin to see life as it really is. Right? I mean, it all comes together in the end, right? It makes perfect sense that that's what we're transcending beyond. And of course, because there is no, well, I'll just keep that thought to myself. Our outcome card, which is where we evolve from that morality card, the Queen of Swords, into the King of Wands, King of Fire, which is an amazing evolution to make. It is a move from defensiveness. It is a move from the narrowness of the mind and ideas and restriction into the fire of inspiration and expansiveness and drive and passion and being alive, for lack of a better way of putting it. So let me find that. Do I have it? No, that's not right. Where is it? King of 48. Okay, sorry. Okay, the source. The Zen master in this card. Oh, that's not right. Oh, God. Oh, dear Lord. Uh, Sorry about that. I can't even read the right. I'm reading the source. I'm just realized it's not. I'm completely out of my mind right now. The source is the Ace of Wands, not the King of Wands. The King of Fire. Ace of Fire. Honestly. Which is actually even better, because it means that we get to like start a whole new journey in that energy. So makes more sense actually. And it's also the card that comes after suppression that we had here. So a real indication that in breaking free of all that conditioning, that we go back to source. When we speak of being grounded or centered, it is this source that we are talking about. When we begin a creative project, it is this source that we tune into. This card reminds us that there is a vast reservoir of energy available to us, and that we tap into it not by thinking and planning, but by getting grounded, centered, and silent enough to be in contact with the source. It is within each of us, like a personal individual sun giving us life and nourishment. Pure energy, pulsating, available. It is ready to give us anything we need to accomplish something, and ready to welcome us back home when we want to rest, which is essentially what the magic practice that I was talking about really is. And that is, I think this is just a strong reminder that no matter how overwhelmed we are in our work or our personal lives, whatever is going on that seems chaotic, that is being squeezed into, a fine-tuned process in that Virgoan energy, and all that shifting out of the illusion with the Mars opposition to Neptune, this is like the answer lies in making time for spiritual self-care, to ground ourselves each day, no matter what's happening. And that can be 3 minutes of your day. It can also be 2 hours if you have that time. But there's no right or wrong. You're not underachieving if you only have 3 minutes to meditate. And that can be as simple as like finding on YouTube like a video of Om chants that you can follow through with, and just empty your mind and focus on making those sounds, and that can be very liberating and very grounding. So anyway, where was I? So, whether you are beginning something new and need new inspiration right now, or you've just finished something and want to rest, go to the source. It's always waiting for you, and you don't even have to step out of your own house to find it. So, it's about setting intention. It's about consciously eradicating resistance and at the same time setting intention. Zen asks you to come out of the head and go to the basic source. It's not that Zen is not aware of the uses of energy in the head, but if all the energy is used in the head, you will never become aware of your eternity. You will never know as an experience what it is to be whole with, to be one with the whole, sorry. When the energy is just at the center, pulsating, when it is not moving anywhere, neither in the head nor in the heart, but it is the very source from where the heart takes it, the head takes it, pulsating at the very source, that is the very meaning of Zen, or Zazen, as it says here. I hate saying that because I sound crazy. Zazen means just sitting at the very source, not moving anywhere. A tremendous force arises, a transformation of energy into light and love, into greater life, into compassion, into creativity. It can take many forms, but first you have to learn how to be the source. Then the source will decide where your potential is. You can relax at the source, and it will take you to your very potential. I think that's a perfect summary of everything we've discussed. So, on that note, I thank you for sharing this time with me, this hour, and I send you all my love. I wish you infinite blessings. I think this is going to be a very accomplished week where maybe some of the chaos starts to make more sense and we start to actually be able to ground ourselves once again. And maybe we'll be strained by activity, but in that process, just make sure that you take the time to love yourself and to be at one with the universe and to make space for inspiration. I love you. I wish you infinite blessings. I hope this is a fantastic week for all of you. And here's to learning. And here's to getting into that page of one's energy and being inspired and ready to learn and receive and doing so with passion, excitement, and adventurousness. Namaste.